Hey guys, my name's Caden Norton. I'm here to talk about the research a psychological study that was completed unethically. And I chose to do the Stanford prison experiment. I know that there's been a couple of people that have done it, and I think that it really is one of the most unethical researches I've come across, that I've seen, that I've experienced. Not that I've experienced it, but that I've actually seen it happen. Why I think it was super unethical is because there were not a lot of controlled variables. There was kind of just a brief explanation of what was actually going to happen. The Stanford experiment was looked as just super highly unethical because the experiment was done just at the bottom of a school of Stanford. It was done by a psychologist by the name of Zimbardo. He was testing the obedience and power play a role in daily life and how far we can actually take power. The participants were all volunteers. Zimbardo actually posted in a newspaper saying, "Hey, need these people to come down. We'll pay so much money for," I think it was 14 days. The experiment actually only ended up lasting about 7 days. The participants all came in. They all did studies on them. They all asked them certain questions. It was pretty simple. Told the prisoners one thing and told the guards one other thing. The guards and prisoners were both picked by the flip of a coin, so there wasn't any biased opinion. It was just by the flip of a coin that made you a prisoner or made you a guard. The unethical parts of it were that Zimbardo told the guards to just treat the prisoners as prisoners and just gave them the power to kind of do whatever. But he also told the prisoners that everything was going to be fine, couldn't harm them, couldn't do anything to them, but didn't tell them much after that. They kind of just let them be prisoners in a basement. And as the study goes on, the guards actually become power hungry and stir hungry, and knowing that they have power over these people, because Zimbardo has told them to act as though these people are prisoners, giving them enticements such as calling them only by their numbers that they were given, calling them girls, making them dress in skirts, like a one shirt skirt, and it was completely unethical because there was no controlled variable in the situation. What were some of the long-term effects on the participants in the study? A lot of them, after they had left the study, were actually believed to know they were only named after their numbers, and that was their name from then on out. A lot of them experienced depression, anxiety. Certain prisoners one prisoner ended up having to leave early because he was so mentally dysfunctional and so physically abused in the experiment that Zimbardo had to actually make him leave. But the other prisoners took that as if they wanted to leave, that they could leave, but the guards said no. And Zimbardo actually said that no one else can leave because the experiment needs to continue to go with no dependent or other variables, which resulted in a lot of physical harm as well as mental dysfunction through some of the prisoners throughout their life. If harm did come, could it have been prevented? Yes. There were a couple of moments when Zimbardo was watching some of the kids, and he was sitting there and understanding that it was getting out of hand. And the other scientists with him, or the other specialists with him, said that he needed to do something, but he refused to because he wanted to see the natural reactance of no variables. He wanted to just see the raw power could overcome people, or if it's something else. So it could have been prevented by Zimbardo either stepping in and preventing some of the things that happened, and or setting certain variables and rules and guidelines to the experiment, but there was none that were actually set. What would have needed to change to make the study more ethical? Like I said, I think that if rules were set in place and if certain variables were set in place, such as you couldn't harm them, they got outside time, or if they had more room or something like that, or they had access to family, or if they had access to certain things and access to food, and obviously all these variables that could have made it more ethical, Zimbardo didn't want it because he just wanted to see how raw it could actually be. So, as we kind of reflect on what Zimbardo did, obviously it was very unethical, but it set the tone for future references that there's ethical guidelines to people with power, and how obedience comes from people being as powerful as they can be, or other variables. And I think that what Zimbardo did to these students was, one, not okay, because he messed some of them up pretty bad for the rest of their lives, or two, I think that Zimbardo, what he did was actually kind of brilliant because it was so raw. It was so, like, there was no variables that could have seen it going any other way. There was so many variables that could have been put in place that he didn't put in place because he wanted to see a different kind of outcome before someone else found out by a different kind of way. And I would rather have it be found out through an experiment. Obviously, do I wish I was there? No. But I think that because he ended up doing it through just a small study, we learned a lot and had to set ethical guidelines for certain situations outside of the experiment that are necessary to our economy today. But the prison experiment was downright just so abusive. It had physical and mental harm throughout the whole entire experiment, and knowing that some of these kids still to the day see themselves as prisoners or see themselves as guards and can remember it like the back of their hand and really felt like they were in prison is mind-blowing to me because of how raw it was and how this experiment was so out of hand. I think that the way that the world works now is better off because of this experiment. I think that a lot of the unethical experiments that have been done have some sort of bright side to it. Obviously, they're not the best, but sometimes you have to go through something super hard to learn what can be super good. And by choosing this experiment, I know there's been a couple of other posts about the Stanford prison experiment. So hopefully you learned something in this video. If you didn't, then I know that there's great other videos that were done by awesome other students and that you can reflect on theirs. But other than that, thanks for watching.